Hello there, and welcome to the Second Life Book Club. My name is Draxtor Dupre, and today on the show is a very special show. I know I say this every week, but today really is. McKinney is on the show, young adult author and writer of superb graphic novels as well. Also, an advocate for equality and not just the token diversity in publishing, with her publishing paid me hashtag. Her novel, A Blade So Black, is a riff on the premise of Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. And as a matter of fact, we are at a replica of the book's entrance into Wonderland. In the book, the the entrance into Wonderland is a broom closet in an Atlanta, Georgia pub called the Looking Glass. And it's my pleasure to be here with our set designer, Ruby Geek, who is dressed up, as I understand, as Alice, dressed up as Princess Serenity, or the other way around. What do I know? Um, and behind her is Addison Hatta, who also plays a important role in the story. Addison Hatta, a white boy who is also a goth, and Alice, the princess. And if we look around here, we also see, and we'll talk about this later in the show, we also see some amazing art by Robin Smith, who collaborated with Al McKinney on a graphic novel for DC Comics, DC Comics Young Adult edition called Nubia Real One. So those are um, little cutouts that give us a little glimpse of what's happening. We also see a lampshade draped around a rabbit, of course, and then here in the broom closet is the portal. I am facing the portal now. You're wondering where is our guest? Our guests, our guest and the audience they're already in Wonderland. I checked earlier; it's completely full. And we're going to get there because above the portal here is a clock. The clock is ticking and it says getting warm. And there's also a arrow that says yonder. So without any further ado, I will go through the portal. And behind me, I hope that Ruby and Addison will also go through the portal because we need them on the other side. And Ruby again today role playing um, Alice. And Ruby put this all together, which is really amazing. She read A Blade So Black as well in preparation for the show. And she also confided in me, and she's probably mad at me that I am admitting this. She became a Elle McKinney fangirl, um, ordering the two other books in the series. And so let me give the camera a little bit time to go through the portal and make sure that the camera is through the portal because we're already in Wonderland and here's the camera. So here we have our version of Wonderland as sort of going through my brain and then Ruby's brain after reading A Blade So Black. There are a lot of nightmares. There is a nightmare loop of images of current times that well has a lot of American symbols here. Native Americans, Trump, Bush. Uh, it's American centric a little bit because our author and our guest is American. We have another cutout here. This is Nubia from Nubia Real One, the graphic novel. And here on the other side, we have some cards floating around. We have a table here with some little tchotchkes, and there is actually a book on this table. Um, what's it called? Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. This is an anthology of works inspired by Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. This is Addison says that's his table. Um, sorry, Addison, don't want to occupy your table. You look good, Addison. By the way, Addison is the one that brought Alice into Wonderland. Um, Alice was just a 17-year-old high school student in Atlanta, Georgia, and then she bumped into Addison Hatta, and the rest It's 400 pages of awesome young adult literature, and we'll also, of course, examine today why I, as a 51-year-old man, is that normal that I enjoy young adult literature and that I identify with the mom in that book. Here's another little display of Nubia. Here's another nightmare. Al McKinney's series is also called the Nightmareverse series. So nightmares play a big role. We'll examine how and what is happening with these nightmares, how humans are influencing these nightmares in the real world and in Wonderland. This is another little thing here from Nubia, and we have a full house. We have people standing. Oh my God, we need more mushrooms. There's a lot of people sitting on mushrooms, and if the camera could go up a little bit, because if the camera tilts up, it says "We are all mad here," written out in beautiful um, letters made of flowers and I guess branches. So this could apply for the book club. It could apply to the book club. It could apply to Second Life. It could apply to I don't know, being in the presence um, of me or El McKinney. El McKinney is here. Welcome to the Second Life Book Club. I don't hear El. Oh my God, have we lost El? El, you need to unmute your microphone. Oh Lordy. Well, let me riff a little bit before until we get
Hello?
here she is. Here she
Okay,
is.
there we go. I'm fair. I was like, I'm clicking the button. Why aren't you responding? I'm clicking the button.
This was the test, CL. In the real world, you would have maybe been allowed into Wonderland for a little while, but then you go like, well, she clicked the wrong button. We got to train her. Actually,
Oh man.
in your book, Alice goes through some training. Like it's like a year training before she. Is that right? No, wait a minute. Like a few months before she gets
Yes.
um badass little daggers and stuff.
Yes.
How long is the training?
Alice trains for a few months, approximately 3 to 4, somewhere in there, and um, had a remarks on this that she takes to it quite naturally. It's almost eerie, and
And Hatta is her trainer. He's basically living in Wonderland, and he goes out to the real world, and then his job is to actually recruit people and bring them into Wonderland to fight nightmares.
correct.
Hmm.
Um, Alice is not the first Dreamwalker that he has trained. Um, and Dreamwalkers, usually around the age of, uh, teenagers, because it's as close as you can get to still having the wonder of a child before it like gets severed by being a jaded adult.
Hold on, Elle.
Uh,
I need to rudely interrupt you. Can you hit your seat again? You're merging in the seat. It's really hilarious. Only your head
oh,
is looking through the seat.
what
It-
do I do?
no, it
Do
looks
I
like
touch
you're
it?
you're the Mad
What do
Hatter
I?
looking out of the armchair. This is
I'm
awesome.
a. Is that better? I don't know.
Hit the chair and then choose one of the sitting animations that comes up in the right
I
hand corner.
choose. I choose. Wow. I chose confidence.
Yeah,
I said I choose. Lord, I'm sorry. I
there you
wasn't
go.
even paying attention. I can't really even see myself. So it's fine. It's fine.
You look
What was I
awesome.
saying?
We're talking about the recruiting process. We're talking about Alice's
Oh
role when she
yes.
enters Wonderland.
So they usually Dreamwalkers come in, um, usually around teenage years, right when they're starting to enter adulthood, because it's still young enough to be kind of connected to the wonder of being a kid. So it's
Right.
easier for them to interact with Wonderland. It's easier for them um, to accept it and impact it the way that they need to be able to impact it.
Right.
Um,
I actually wanted to give people a quick taste because, El, your publisher sent all these books to my good friend Tony Harper in Palm Springs, California. And she was a little sick with COVID. She's recovered. She's 85 years old. She has those books at her house. She loves those books, but her housekeeper can't find them anymore. So I bought them and had them shipped to Germany. And when you were here first, because you're the only person that came to the Second Life Book Club twice. I think there's one other person. Um,
Huh.
yeah, I mean, it's amazing, right? I mean, you're the only person that we re-invited.
Cool. I feel special.
Actually, we tried to invite every other one, but nobody accepted. Okay, that's a bad joke. No, but the cool thing is that today I actually have read the books, and A Blade So Black is absolutely fantastic. And as you're pointing out, this is a 17-year-old girl, Alice, and it's at that time where she is accepting the Wonderland, um, and she does not question it as something that could not exist. And I want to give people a quick taste, and don't worry, we'll have Elle read as well. But this is from fairly in the beginning of the book where her father passes away, and she runs out of the hospital. She's in the hospital, and she runs out. The father died. Um, and she's very upset. She runs away and she's out there in this alley. And then she starts hearing voices. So here's where I'm going to start. Oh, I can't just leave you, not when your fear is so inviting. Ellis lifted her head to search the emptiness around her. She sat in the mouth of an alley, God knows where. Her tears made it hard to see. Snot and the stink of something sour made it hard to breathe. I can take it away. The darkness shifted with movement deeper in the alley, coming toward her. Let me help you. A dog stepped out of the black. Huge paws ended with long, wicked claws that clacked against the ground. Inky skin, no fur, rippled as it moved. Illuminated eyes blinked at her. One pair, then two, then three. Lips curled in a flash of fangs the size of her fingers. Trembling in Alice's gut shuddered through the rest of her. She screamed. It lunged. Teeth snapped shut just inches shy of her face. Drool that smelt like rotten meat splashed across her chest and cheek. She scrambled backward, trying to call for help. The words choked in a wail. The roughness of the brick at her back caught her clothes and scraped her skin. She was trapped. Instead of attacking again, the creature collapsed and flailed, ripping at the ground. Traitor! It shrieked. Yeah, yeah. The air quivered, steeped in shadows that seemed to recoil as a white boy stepped into view. He gripped the end of something sticking out of the monster's back. A sword, Alice realized. The thunder of her heartbeat against her skull sharpened. What little light that managed to thread the gloom hovered along the length of the blade as if afraid or unable to touch it. You will suffer! You will all suffer! Pinned to the ground, the beast thrashed. Yellow blood slid against the blade, coating the onyx metal, dripping onto the pavement beneath it. What's that? I couldn't hear you over the sound of. The boy pulled the sword free and drove it in again with a slurge. Alice jerked. So did the monster. Then it fell still. The glow in its eyes slowly faded. So that's near the beginning of A Blade So Black. I mean, right away, total action, um, just absolutely awesome. Like I said earlier, I'm 51 years old. I love to read young adult books. It throws me back to my teenage years, and um, it makes me think about like, you know, does this represent me? And weirdly enough, it does. Although it's about an African American girl and going super badass in Wonderland. Um, really awesome book, L. Absolutely amazing. Uh, Great accomplishment. I want to ask you the responsibilities, the pressures that are on Alice. That's one of the things that stood out for me. Like they happen in the real world, and they happen in Wonderland right away again. I mean, that's something that for that age is so I don't know, palpable. That's the core experience, and you you do a great job of depicting how that is not really appreciated by the adults around her, I feel like. I mean, her mother is very protective, but she's also super distant. So that really resonated with me. Like, here's the 7-year-old. She has to slay monsters. There's also a police shooting in the real world. Her father died. You know, the mother is there, but all these, and then there's school. Um, yeah. Tell me a little bit about how did you was that an aspect that was important to you to the pig?
Well, I wanted, first and foremost, to show a family, a black family in particular, that was just like every other family, where it's people, whole human beings trying to circumnavigate a limited space. It's like two universes colliding, literally. And so there's going to be friction. And like you said, Alice's mother is very protective because there have been things happening in their neighborhood, like the shooting and other issues. So she's scared that, her baby could be next. And that is a real fear that parents in America have. Gun violence is a thing here. And it's also very acute for Black parents who have to have that talk, um, what to do if this happens or that happens, what to say, because the important thing is that you make it home. Um, it's a talk I've had to witness my sisters giving to to their kids, my nieces
Right.
and nephews. So I wanted to show how stuff like that has an impact. Like, one of the things with fantasy is you have these kids who go off on these grand adventures, and their focus is the grand adventure. Very rarely kind of does the real world poke its head in, with the exception of, oh, random person who's not part of the world is in trouble. Maybe it's a love interest, maybe it's a parent. But most of the
So you're bringing
stakes
up the
as a,
the stakes exactly. I was gonna
yes,
say. I
most
mean,
of the
this is
stakes have to
right.
do with like world ending things. And it's like, well, yes, that's the truth for Alice as well, but also all these other additional pressures that would exist if Alice were a real person.
Right. And do you feel like, I mean, is this classified as urban fantasy?
Yes and no. Because
Labels,
there's
don't you love them?
it's great. Well, because there are two camps about urban fantasy, and both of them are very valid. One is the quote unquote traditional definition of urban fantasy, where it's, Buffy the Vampire Slayer is urban fantasy. Um, weirdly enough, Power Rangers could be considered urban fantasy.
Oh my God,
Like,
yeah.
I'm just because it has to do with the magic system that is either on top of or beneath the everyday system of our world, usually in a city setting. Um, and most of the time people either don't know about it or do know about the world, but it's still very distinct. And the
Right.
protagonist is how we find how those two worlds are woven together. So
Ava is saying hell no in the about Power Rangers in the local chat.
listen, when it comes down to the strictest of definitions,
Yeah, yeah.
it is. um but you also have how people like to use certain words, as dog whistles, or to invoke certain stereotypes, where urban is another word for Black.
Mm, mm,
So there have been issues where people have said urban fantasy, meaning fantasy about Black people. It doesn't matter whether or not it takes place in a city or follows the trope of traditional urban fantasy. So I understand both conversations, and being a participant in both conversations, being a Black woman who loves to read and write urban fantasy, as in, Buffy the Vampire Slayer type stuff.
Bella
Um,
says here in the local chat, happens to us countrified black folk too.
well, that's the thing is, it's funny because I am like my people's is country, right? But I also have urban tastes because I grew up as my family's from all over the place. So we would spend years in like Atlanta and then in Baltimore and but Kansas City is where I call home. It's where we come back to all the time. And our people came up from Alabama, Arkansas, and Louisiana. So it's a mix. It really is. So you get this idea of how the world views urban and then how the fantasy genre views urban. So again, I can
Mhm.
appreciate both conversations. I'm engaged in both conversations. I can see where both have merit. So I would say that yes, it is urban fantasy, as in there is a secondary world in the city where she lives, Atlanta, and she's killing monsters, and the mentors and magic and blah blah blah. It's urban fantasy. No, it is not urban fantasy, as in where you substitute urban to mean black. So
Now, and as we established, you do raise the stakes a little bit. There's not just a love interest in the physical realm or homework to be done. There are other things, police shootings and so on and so forth. Now, I want to right away talk about, because this is really important. I want to talk about representation, and people are going to kill me because I'm bringing up a slide here. Camera, please zoom in. As I was preparing the show, I realized that when I was a teenager, I was well represented as a white male in a fantasy, namely Conan the Barbarian, written in the 20s and 30s by Robert E. Howard, a little bit of a racist um, himself. And I put up a slide now of my shelf, my bookshelf with all my Conan books in German with Arnold Schwarzenegger on the cover. Now, Conan represented me. He was strong. He had swords. He always got women. There was a lot of adventure, and for God's sakes, he was also Austrian. At least Arnold was. And if people look next to it, is actually Karl May. Karl May is a German author who wrote about America and about Native Americans. Um, it's also somewhat problematic. This stuff, a staple of German young adult literature. So I want to. The reason why I bring this up is that um, something pretty obvious is that white uh, teenagers, primarily male, are well represented, and our researcher Shyla researched, and she actually called her library to recommend titles from the 50s uh, with that depicted black kids. And this is another slide here, or teenagers, books that were geared towards teenagers. I don't know if Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison is necessarily for teenagers, but basically, in the 50s and 60s, it was pretty darn rare. Now, I'm asking you, um, Elle, what was your experience growing up? I mean, where did you see yourself represented? And you're younger than me, so I'm assuming maybe it got a little better. Uh,
um, yes and no. Um, in like things existed, right? You had characters who were showing up here and there. Storm is in X-Men, and you got Bumblebee and such running around over at DC. It is better, but as to quote James
how about
Baldwin,
movies and comics, but also specifically
well, yeah,
also books, I'm asking.
books, yeah.
Yeah.
And to quote James Baldwin, if you stab a 9-inch knife into my back and you pull it out 3 inches, that's better, but there's still a big problem.
Hmm.
So for my personal experience, A Blade So Black is the first book that I published. It's about a black girl. It is not, however, the first book that I wrote. It is around the fourth. The first few stories that I wrote were about white boys because I thought that's what you had to write to get published because that's all I had to read as a kid. Now, I'm going to immediately push back against anyone who might think, oh, well, there were stories. Yes, there were.
Hmm.
But one, there were very, 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 very few of them. And I mean in the realm of science fiction and fantasy. I don't mean the same stories that, you come back to about Black pain, like civil rights and slavery and Jim Crow, which are important stories, but they seem to be the only ones that people outside of the Black community are interested in hearing over and over and over again. And it kind of gets tiring when all you ever see in your representation is generations worth of trauma.
Hmm.
So just throwing that out there. Um, so that's why I read science fiction and fantasy, was to escape, wanted to get away. Um, and I didn't know about Octavia Butler until
Mm.
college. And the reason that is because the librarians and we moved around a lot when I was a kid. So in all of my elementary schools, middle school, high school, none of those librarians, and then the libraries in the cities, because we were avid visitors of the library. My mother would drop us off at the library across the street from the grocery store. She would go shopping 2 hours. We're in the library stacking up books, reading books and stacking up the ones that we can't finish now. So we read a lot. But each of those librarians, when I would ask for a book about this, they would always bring me a book about a white boy without
Hmm.
fail,
Hmm.
every time. Didn't find out about Octavia Butler until college because of that. Octavia Butler's been writing science fiction for as long as I've been breathing air. Essentially, that's how long her stuff has been out.
One second, I don't want to interrupt you, but the magic is that we have an Octavia Butler slide, and I'm bringing up Octavia Butler, and this is really fascinating. As you were saying, you were requesting the librarians to give you stuff, and Octavia Butler, in fact, was born in 1947, so the stuff was around. Uh, Parable of the Sower is one of my absolute favorite books. On
Mm-hmm.
this slide, we have Kindred. These books have been around for a long time, so it's
Yeah.
frankly shocking that you're telling me that a librarian would not be aware of these books.
Well, that's the thing, is that they might be aware of them, but they're not the books that are at the forefront of their mind. They're not the
Mm,
books that they consider mainstream. They're not the books that they consider, like, because if you don't diversify your own consumption of entertainment, when you then offer up recommendations, you're going to give out monochromatic recommendations. That's just how
mhm,
that works.
mhm,
That it's just the way that it is. Um, and so that's why there's also a push with diversity and inclusion in publishing. You'll see teachers and librarians of color, particularly Black teachers and librarians, who are pushing against, you know, things like the current canon or what counts as classic. Because you got
right.
to remember that when some of these quote unquote classics were being written, it was illegal for Black people to read or write. So
Yep.
based on that, like the criteria for what does or doesn't count as a classic is heavily skewed towards a particular demographic.
Uh,
So yeah.
we have a few. I just want to go briefly here through the Judy Lynn in the audience says Soul Brothers and Sister Lou was a classic that she remembers. That's by Christian Hunter Latany. And Judy, if you have a link, put it in there, and then we'll archive that and put it all together in the book club group. Uh, yeah, I mean this is quite fascinating, Al. This is really kind of a chicken and egg thing. We were talking in preparation of the show. It's almost like an airport bookstore in a way, where it's only a just very limited selection, and then people buy this, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I wonder if that's in publishing. It's the same thing, right? I mean,
Well, the thing
publishers
with
say, well, black people don't want to read this kind of stuff, so we're not going to publish it. But if you don't publish it, they don't have the stuff to read.
well, okay, so let me give you a scenario, right? If you haven't read it, I'm fairly certain if you were aware of young adult books at all, you might be aware of a little book called The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas.
Hmm.
Um, has been on the bestseller list for doggone near half a decade at this point, right?
Hmm.
So we know this book, yes. This book was in a huge auction, and there was an editor, a Black man, an editor, who wanted to be part of it. And he put into his higher ups that he wanted to acquire this book. And it came down from on high. No, we're not going to spend this money because Black people don't read. Black kids don't read. The hate you give, mind you. So this was just in 2017 when that was a thing. It's said at meetings. Up until recently, they wouldn't put Black people on the covers of books because they were like, oh, people won't buy it if there's a Black person on it. Again, not that long ago.
Mm.
Some of these things are still being said in subtler ways, but it's still happening in meetings. So this is the thing that goes on in publishing. So when you get a Black writer who has a book, they'll pay that author less, because this is something that came out with publishing. Paid me, we just know it's a thing. They pay less for the Black book. One, because they don't view that book as being a universal tale, a universal story that a lot of people will be able to connect to. Because most people haven't been trained to connect to things outside of what they've been shown their entire lives. I have been having to find connections in characters that don't represent me for as long as I've been reading, watching, listening to entertainment. I know very well how to find a way to connect to a character that's nothing like me. It doesn't work the other way around so easily because y'all are out of practice.
That's true. I
That's
look at
just the way that it goes.
I look at my Conan shelf and I see myself right there in Arnold. We're gonna get deeper into the publishing paid me a hashtag that I I I suppose you started and that uh, really provided a lot of information about some like you're hinting at. I mean, some really um, crazy things that are going on in publishing. I'm just wondering real quick about the Angie Thomas's book. What was that? How did this information come out? Because oftentimes authors are also probably barred with like NDAs and stuff like that.
Yes and no. It's an unspoken but spoken rule that you don't talk about a deal until the publisher has agreed that they want to talk about it. Some things you just are encouraged to not discuss. I mean, publishing is a corporate functioning place, just like any other corporation in America. So they discourage you from talking about money, right?
Mm.
So it's one of those things where it was just understood that you didn't talk about it because once more, if you talk about it and you see that this is a problem, you can then go talk to the people who caused the problem and they don't want that. So um it was one of those things where we
Some
just
somebody said something, and then
yeah,
it got the ball rolling. No, I mean
yeah.
that's how it goes. Now, Elle, if I could ask you to stand up, this is the one big action part of the book club. A book stand magically appears out of nowhere, and it has a blade so black. You just stand up by
How
hitting.
do I stand
You,
up?
this is a live Second Life tutorial. You hit the stand button on the bottom, and then you can walk
There's a
forward.
stand, but
Uh,
oh, okay, I see it.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Look at
I'm
these
with you.
gamers. These top-notch
Oh
gamers. Like,
Jesus, what is happening? Why am I
no, you're
walking?
good. You're good. You're good. So there you go. Just stand there, and the book stand will come to you, and
Okay.
we'll have a little excerpt from A Blade So Black. But briefly, before you start reading, you can get your reading material in order. I want to throw up this slide here. If the camera can zoom on our slide projector, this is also something that Shyla prepared, and this is Augusta Baker, who was a prominent librarian uh, passed away in 1998, and she was known for her contributions to children's literature. This is a quote from her. From the late 40s into the 50s, editors were publishing a wider variety of stories. school desegregation stories such as Mary Jane, career stories, sports stories, and historical fiction. White authors and illustrators were still the major producers of these books, few as they were. Some authors attempted to write the story from the black point of view and failed. Now, these are white folks telling these stories. Others, like Dorothy Sterling, Hildegard Swift, and the Bames, were writing successful books because they were perceptive, socially conscious, and understanding. So I just want to throw this out there again to add to what Elle was just saying. There were stories that had a particular storyline. There were stories of suffering, but also focused on sports. And many times, um, these stories, again, we're talking about the 40s and 50s. We're way past that now, but it's really important um, how pervasive that is. And that stuff just there's a history to everything, and it just doesn't go away that quickly. That ecosystem is system just does not appear overnight. This is just a few generations before where white people were telling these very, very narrowly tailored um, stories of, narrow redemption and sports and stuff like that. So now, what are we going to hear from your book, Elle?
Okay.
What are you going to read for us?
So
Set it up,
this
please.
is after the excerpt that you read earlier. It's towards the beginning. It's after Alice has completed her training and she has entered Wonderland for the first time with the goal to kill her very first nightmare. It's supposed to be a small one, no problem. Addison is with her. She's, off to see if she can do this.
Wait. That's her job. So let's be clear. So Alice's job now is to kill these nightmares. Uh, why did she have to kill them?
So, nightmares are essentially what happens when a lot of the negativity from people, particularly fear, anger, things like that, coalesce in the world of dreams, which is Wonderland. They become these monsters that then try to break back through to the world of man in order to wreak havoc. So Alice's job as a dream walker, her and a few other uh, folks around the world, is to cross into Wonderland and kill the creatures before they can enter the real world so that they stop the nonsense. And the reason Alice and all these other kids are able to do it is because only humans can purge a nightmare. People from Wonderland can kill
Hmm.
them, but they will seep into the ground and then come back a few days later. In order to get rid of it completely, a human has to purge it because humans are the source of nightmares. So
You
that
could
is what
say.
she does. And what he has been training to do, essentially.
All right. Go ahead.
Okay. So this is after they have entered Wonderland and the nightmare that they were supposed to be after has revealed itself and it's much bigger than either of them anticipated. Alice's heart practically uppercut her when it jumped so hard, but Addison spun out of the way, unsheathing a sword and slicing across the beast's side in the same move. The monster roared. Yellow blood splattered the tall grass. Addison slid into a ready stance, his weapon lifted, the silvery blade shining against the night. We can go back, he called without taking his eyes off of the monster. He dodged again, rolling under a swipe of claws. I can stop it, and we can wait for it to reform. Try again later. No, no. Alice lifted her trembling hands to the sides of her face. How could she suck so bad at something she'd trained so hard to do? But she couldn't. It was too much. Breathe, baby moon. Dad's voice filled her head. It did that a lot lately. Memories of him laughing with her, talking to her, chastising her. The tears spilled free and she shook her head. I can't, she whispered. Breathe. I can't. Breathe. I'll try. Ain't no try, you know that. What you gonna do? Alice's hands fell to the daggers at her hips. She palmed the pommels before gripping them tight and yanking them free. Azure moonlight filled the crystalline surfaces of the blades. Across the meadow, Addison fended off a swipe of claws, the shriek of grating metal filling the air. He leapt back and shot a glance Alice's direction. Their eyes met. What you gonna do? Her fingers tightened. Something swept through her, pushing outward from the center of her chest to the top of her head and the soles of her feet. This. I'ma do this. The nightmare whipped around to face her. It loosed a roar and pounded the ground with its feet. Alice adjusted her weight, then pushed off into a run. The smell of grass and dirt snapped crisp against her senses. Her steps thudded along the ground, mirroring the pounding of her heart, a storm in her chest. She darted across the meadow, coming around the monster's flank. It stood out against the black, her vision sharpening. Before the nightmare could turn to take her head on, she jumped. Aim for its core, Addison's voice reached her above the scream of wind in her ears. The figment blades burned against the night. Their fire stampeded up her arms, filling her, fueling her, igniting something inside her that would never dim again. As she came down on the beast, she tightened her grip and threw her weight into the thrust. The monster roared. So did she. They collided.
And that is Elle McKinney reading from A Blade So Black. Absolutely awesome. So much action. You know what? Let's go right to the next one. Let's go right to the next excerpt. That's a little bit later in the book. Let's see here. This is chapter 7.
Yes.
Is this action again, Elle? Is this nonstop action? Is there no contemplation? Is it just violence?
There is, well, no.
Is there not just like, oh, these nightmares, they just had a bad upbringing. Let's hug them.
There's a lot of action. I will admit, I do love me a good action scene. I do love writing me a good action scene. I love watching them. They're my favorite part in TV shows and movies and video games. And like, I likes me a good action scene. I'm not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
But this is just sort of show a little bit of the growth and how Alice has gone from being a trainee, and that was her first time fighting a monster, and she panicked and freaked out, and Addison had to step in. And this is a year later. She's been at this for a while. She's had some close calls, but she's a little more confident, and you can kind of see it in the way that she moves. But she's on her way home. She's currently in Wonderland, and she's headed back towards the gateway, which is how they get between the real world
Right, and the gateway
Wonderland.
pushes her out. She comes out of the broom closet in the pub called the Looking Glass.
Yes. So the gateway is, there are 4 gateways total. There's north, south, east, west, cardinal directions, and they're located across the world. Addison Hatta is the keeper of the Western Gateway, and Alice is the Western Gateway's Dreamwalker. And the gateway is there to protect a weak spot in the veil, which is sort of the curtainy thing that separates the real world and Wonderland. So he takes her through. She kills the nightmare. He brings her back. So she went to kill the nightmare. She's on her way back to the gateway. And as she's walking, she gets distracted because she's in her head complaining about, blood on her shoes because they're new and she didn't have time to change. So she's mad. So as she's thinking about this, she hears that she's not alone, and that's where we pick up.
All right.
Okay. Something snapped in front of her. She froze. Silence descended like a plague. She scanned at the brush, following sounds she thought she heard. Her fingers curled tight around the hilt of her dagger. Another snap. A crunch of leaves at her 7. Whatever was out there and circling her, it was fast. The twins? If they were playing another prank, she was going to hand them their asses. But they wouldn't follow her clear to her gateway for no reason, or risk pissing off the Duchess by dicking around this much. No, this was something else. Alice held steady, listening, waiting. Then it came at her from the right. The ring of metal against metal filled her ears as an inky blade clashed with her silver one. Her attacker pressed the advance, driving her back with momentum from a lunge. She stumbled, unable to plant her feet. Shit. When their blades came free, she twisted to avoid another strike and tumbled to the ground. The sound of her heart blasted in her ears. Get up. She swept around into a crouch, her blade lifted and ready. You're fast, I'll give you that. Amusement coated her unseen opponent's tone, his voice smooth despite the mask he wore. Or was it a helmet? It was black and held a faint shine, along with the rest of the material covering with him. Some sort of high impact body armor. He shook his head. But you're sloppy. Ignoring the remark, she stood, brandishing her dagger, her muscles tense as her chest heaved. He seemed at ease, with one hand at his waist, while the other lifted his sword to rest against his shoulder. Her eyes locked on the blade, long, black, single-edged, and sleek, appearing to hang in the atmosphere as if snagged on the air itself. It didn't reflect the moonlight so much as suck it in and snuff it out. Oh, you like? He lifted the sword. It was a gift. Who are you? Alice demanded through clenched teeth. And what do you want? She speaks. His smile was audible, and he tilted his head. And I wanted your attention. Shouting, hey, you would have worked. Boring, he shrugged, and a little silly. Alice snatched her other dagger free, whipping both of them into a defensive stance, ignoring the throb moving through her arm. Easy, kitten, he chuckled. We'll get to the fun, but first a bit of business. I need you to give a message to your handler. He's not my handler. Tell him I want the eye, he continued. He has it, and I'm coming to get it. I? She blinked rapidly, frowning. Not that I give a damn, but who do I say sent this message? Some rando SWAT ninja? The Black Knight. She barked a laugh. Seriously? The Black Knight? That's what you're going with? He shrugged. The Dark Knight was taken.
Absolutely awesome. And this shows, thank you, Al. This Al McKinney reading from A Blade So Black. It also shows that there is action, but there's also really, really hilarious, good humor in it too. Yeah, the Dark Knight was taken. Please take a seat, and we're going to now go to the graphic novel part of the programming. I'm going to hide the book display, and magically, because this is Second Life after all, you have to right-click the chair, and then you'll sit. Right-click it and choose sit here. Um, you wrote a graphic novel called Nubia Real One. And it's illustrated by Robin Smith. It's absolutely awesome. Similar stakes in terms of reality with police brutality surrounding this community. The kids. This is something that the kids experience. This is something that the kids are worried about. Nubia's moms are also naturally very protective. Nobody would blame them. And yeah, Nubia, and I hope I don't completely spoil it, has some superpowers. And there's actually one scene where she gets some advice from Wonder Woman herself. This is a really, really awesome, absolutely awesome comic book. I don't have a question other than maybe how, how did this happen? How did you come up with this?
So,
In 2 minutes or less,
Nubia,
L, because
in 2 minutes or
no,
less.
no.
Yeah. That's not gonna happen. That's never gonna happen, just to be honest. With me. Um, well, I've always been a comic book fan, right? It's my grandma. She gave me my first comic book when I was a wee thing. And I have loved a lot of, the few characters that have been around, that look like me. So,
Mhm.
uh, Storm, Nubia, all that. I've been an avid fan for many, many years. And anytime someone says, oh, that's Black Wonder Woman, I have to correct them. I'm like, no, her name is Nubia. She's an actual character. She's Wonder Woman's twin sister. Most people don't know about that.
That's
So
actually, yeah, that comes out. That's awesome. That is something. Usually, I have Wikipedia open with every book I read, and now I have to have Wikipedia open even when I read graphic novels. And
yes,
you weave that into the story. Yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
Well, I mean, it's the original mythos because Nubia was Wonder Woman's twin sister. She debuted in 73, 63, one of the threes. Don't ask me the math right now. She debuted way back when, right?
People in the chat, please research that right now. Why do we have an audience? Come on.
She debuted way back when, and she was revealed to be Wonder Woman's twin sister. She had the same powers as Wonder Woman. You know, was one of the only people who could go toe to toe with Diana, full on. You know, good to go. And then Crisis on Infinite Earths happens, and everybody got reset. Nubia got reset, and she became just a regular Amazon. Now, Amazons are amazing.
Mhm.
They just are. But when you go from being the equal to Wonder Woman to being just a regular Amazon, that is a demotion. And so a lot of fans were upset about it. I certainly was upset about it after I found out about it. You know, even though it happened before I was even knew what a comic was, I was still pissed. A little pissed girl. Like, how dare they? Especially when, if you look at the original comic, Nubia is the rightful heir to the throne because she was finished. Hippolyta finished Nubia, worked on Nubia and finished her. And in the comic strip, you can see Nubia standing to the side, fully formed, while Hippolyta is working on Diana. Diana is the younger sister. So not only was she the equal to Wonder Woman, she is the rightful heir to the throne, which she's now getting separate from it's a whole thing, but whatever, you know, DC. So I have been mad about this for a very long time. And
People in the chat, Judy Lynn says, "Wow, I never knew that. You're blowing people's minds, L."
yes, this is it's one of it's a shame because there's a lot of characters um where, you know, people were writing, trying to insert a character, make things more diverse. You know, bless your hearts for trying. It's we're never going to discount, you know, the attempt. Um, especially when you weren't exactly sure how. You know,
Mhm.
you tried, but you weren't exactly sure how, and you weren't aware that you should maybe ask the people who need the representation how to go about it instead of, you know, just thinking that what you know is mother knows best, you know, whatever. Um, so um, that's all going on, and I um, I say on Twitter one day that I want to write for Young Justice, the TV show, and this DC executive who we follow had talked a little bit messaged me and said, "Want to talk?" And I was like, "Yes." So I
That's
pitched
how you
Young
get
Justice.
jobs. I did it all wrong. I was calling them I was like standing outside of Universal Studios, and now I have a restraining order. So I just need to put out a message. I want to write for XYZ.
Well,
I see.
that was the message, but also I still had my other work behind me, like, you know, A Blade So Black was out there. Other stuff was coming
Yeah, yeah.
out. My short stories were out, so I had, like, these were people who had read my work and they were like, okay, yeah, this could work. Um, so I pitched Young Justice, and I snuck Nubia in. Nubia was
Hmm.
in the pitch for Young Justice because if I was gonna write for DC, then damn it, we were gonna get Nubia back. That's how I felt
That's it.
personally.
That's awesome.
And so she's in there. She's not, you know, the main focus, but she's kind of like a hefty side character, you know.
That is so
Um,
awesome. I mean, this really bears repeating, folks. If you have a door, if you have a foot in the door, you just be ready to sneak some stuff in because executives, they don't pay 100% attention at all time. And then when it's in there and they love it, then they actually feel like, wow, I actually gave this creative person the opportunity, and then they pat themselves on the back, and then everybody's happy.
it was well. I snuck Nubia into the pitch. She was there, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, you have a lot going on in the comic." Oh, you know, some people are like, "Why would you make this about this?" protests, blah blah blah. You wouldn't do that if it wasn't a white hero. And I was like, oh honey, the protests was in my pitch for Young Justice. Superboy, Robin, and them were gonna be at a protest. It was gonna happen. A lot of what ended up in Nubia Real One, I pulled over from the Young Justice pitch. Because it still worked. It was around Nubia's story. So I pitched Young Justice with Nubia being the primary focus. Them trying to figure out who she is, what's going on, blah blah blah. And then the team came back and they said, "We love the pitch. This is amazing. However, could you pitch us something that's just Nubia?" And I was like, "Bet, yes, absolutely." So I took it back. I pulled Nubia from the story and all the elements from the story, and I worked it so that it was just her and her friends. Maybe before she had met the team, that could potentially happen in the future, because this would have happened before what I had planned. And I pitched it and they loved it. And that's how me screaming about wanting to write Young Justice ended up with me bringing Nubia back.
Awesome. We're running out of time as usual. I'm sorry, Elle. I'm the timekeeper here. I have
No
my
problem.
my tasks are terrible. I wish we had 3 hours for this show, but we can go over. So like I always joke, I started with the NPR clock, and then I completely forgot it once I entered the Second Life Book Club. Um, so Nubia is this is out. Oh, actually, one quick question, Nick. All these, the mothers are very strict. Again, for totally understandable reasons. But I find it actually awesome that when there is a dispute and when the mother's basically, you know what, I can't trust you, you're grounded. The the teenagers, and they're 17 years old, they respond with yes, ma'am. Is that a thing? I'm
um,
asking as a German white boy. I don't
I
have that
mean,
experience.
I cannot say who it is or isn't a thing for, but I know where I'm from. It's yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, some, no, some, you know, um, depending on how somebody wants to be referenced, their preferred pronouns or their pronouns, not preferred,
Actually,
their pronouns. Um,
Tala Silvercloud just says here in the local chat, she says, yes, it is yes, ma'am, or slapped into next
yes,
week.
yes, it's yes, yeah. And that's just I can't. There are so many theories as to where that comes from. Some of them positive, some of them negative. I just know that that's part of the culture. It's part of a lot of cultures. Um, your elders are due a certain modicum of respect simply for their experience and what it is that they do.
Right,
Um,
right.
this is by no means is any way saying that you are beholden unto every single thing. No, but it is a just a thing that you understood that this person was an elder, and you give them the respect due an elder.
And I want to just make this clear. I'm not saying this in any sort of like, oh, this is so strange. How can this be? I'm just honestly, this is the curiosity of an ethnographer going into a community that is not my own. I find it absolutely fascinating, and we talk about this on the book club every single week. And I think the audience here is also an audience that wants to actually learn through the eyes of an author that comes from a different milieu, a different um, group
Yeah,
within the class structure, within an ethnic context, or within wherever they are in the world, and we want to learn through their eyes, their experience. Um, so let me just tell here the folks in the local chat that we're going to address the questions later in the post game. Now, could my trusted advisor please make these panels disappear? Because now I do want at the end want to address the um, publishing paid me thing, and
Mm-hmm.
we have a little Twitter thing here from you from I think January this year. So let me see. I got to get rid of the panel so that we can actually see it. My assistant is my assistant is currently Googling yes, ma'am, I guess. So here you tweeted on January 7th. I don't know if it was this year or last year. You tweeted because here we saw this after publishing paid me how white agents have to own up to their part in the disparity, how they need to be having conversations with their non-white clients about how they let this happen and how they're going to fix it. Same thing with this nonsense, because what should have happened is these agents hanging up in their face, maybe after laughing in it, but for them to then turn around and put this on their clients who are authors of color, no, 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 no. So nobody knows what's going on. And I know, Al, I love asking really super broad questions. Give us a backdrop and do it in 2 minutes. I'm just joking. Take as long as you want. But what's going on here? What was happening here with this?
Okay, so in this particular context, I do not know. This is January. Like I can kind of tell that it was one of those things where publishing was just on their bullshit. That's just what they do. Um,
But
but
bullshit
what
in
I
the
was
sense of just sort of stalling or what do you call it, stonewalling about being open about stuff, or downright lying about how they treat writers of color vis-a-vis their white clients.
well, it depends. It's all bullshit. What I'm saying I know what I'm saying in the first tweet is publishing paid me revealed the disparity, right?
Hmm.
Well, the disparity didn't happen by itself. It wasn't just that publishers offered these paltry advances, agents accepted them. Agents didn't argue back, didn't demand more. You know, they didn't see, oh, hey, my client who I just sold a book to, similar type, writing genre, you just offered way less. What's going on?
Hmm.
And it's the only client you offered this little on out of these however many clients I just submit. So it's one of those things where it's like you have to acknowledge that it's not just on the um the publisher side of things as well.
Hmm. But also the agents.
So that's what that tweet was referencing.
Hmm.
What it's referencing afterwards, I couldn't tell you. It probably had to do with, like, I probably could go back and look,
Oh
but
no, no,
that's
please don't.
effort.
This is just to open. No, no, no. This is just to open the conversation because the publishing paid me hashtag opened up. I mean, what did it do? In your estimation, I
So
mean, it allowed people to say to basically just with some of these other things that thank God are happening with um violence in against women in certain industries. And such, that people step forward and say, well, other people are talking about it, so I can talk
well,
about it too.
so what happened is summer 2020 was a lot. Things were happening with George Floyd. People were putting black squares on their Instagram accounts. But protesting it was just a lot. It was summer 2020 was a lot. And as many allies are apt to do, sorry, not sorry, there was a lot of lip service happening on Twitter and other platforms. Companies were like, Black Lives Matter, listen to Black voices are important. Meanwhile, Black authors are like, oh, are they now? Because that's news to me. Yeah, I ain't been acting like that. Was This is a whole lie. So Tochi Onyebuchi, another YA author, he's the homie. He had said on Twitter, you know, something to the effect of white allies, if y'all want to if y'all want to have this equality conversation, you're going to have to be ready to talk about money. You're
Hmm.
going to have to be ready to have the uncomfortable discussion about money. And a bunch of people were like, yes, I'm ready to have the conversation. So important. But nobody said anything. It was all,
Hmm.
yes, let's do it, but no one actually doing anything. So I watched this for one, maybe 2 days. And I got pissed and I started yelling on Twitter. Y'all said y'all wanted to have the conversation. Y'all ain't saying nothing. Where your numbers at? Put up or shut up. Still nobody said anything. So I was like, do y'all need a hashtag? Publishing paid me this amount. Here, go. And a few people started responding, and then other people started responding, and it built from there, to where you had Jessamine Ward and Roxane Gay and N.K. Jemisin, these titans of literature commenting and talking about it. And the world sort of reckoning with this not so secret from publishing was that you will pay someone who has never written a book before $800,000, white dude.
Hmm.
But you have Jessamine Ward, winner of the National Book Award, winner of many things. She's been on the list of dignitaries around the world. She had to fight just to get higher than 50, higher than 100 for the book after the one that won all the awards and was the bestseller and the president picked it and things like that. So this new person, no one ever heard of him, nearly $1 million.
Hmm.
This proven award-winning best-selling author who's a black woman, didn't want to give her anything barely. So that's what Publishing Pay Me did, was it revealed stuff like that was going on, that we knew. And when I say we, I mean black authors. Is we know, you know, but then seeing this, it was a lot, and it made sense because the acquiring editors are looking for stories that they connect to, and like I said at the beginning, white people have much more work to do to connect with characters that don't look like them because it's not a muscle you've had to really flex.
It's not a must like that, but also what you said earlier, also then that this notion that probably even well-meaning people, I think, believe in that industry that black people are really not that interested in reading in general. I mean,
Well,
I
here's the
can
thing
imagine that
is
that's still pretty widespread, right? With people
it
where
is
they go,
widespread. That is the lie.
basically like, hey, I would love to publish this stuff, but what am I going to do? I have a business to run. I can't just put that stuff
That is
out
the
there.
lie. That is the lie that publishing has. And here's the thing where they say, well, we follow the market, we follow the trend, which is one of the reasons why they won't pay um, a black author that much. And then when the book, and because they don't pay for a lot for it, they don't pay a lot to market it. If they only spend $5,000 on it, they're not going to spend $50,000 making sure people know about it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when the book doesn't do well, they say, "Oh, you see,
Mm-hmm.
black stories don't do well."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 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 yeah.
But when
Yeah.
it's a white author who got more money, didn't
Marketing
get
and
that money
everything. Yeah.
back, they also flopped. Publishing will then give them another chance. I know some people who've gotten 4 or 5 chances, hundreds of thousands of dollars, because the author didn't fail, the book failed. But when it's a black author, the author failed.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that gets broken down. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You pay all this, you pay this little amount, and because you paid so little, you don't really market it. And because you don't market it, nobody knows about it, nobody buys it. Now you're here saying black people don't buy. You don't know.
Yeah.
You also don't know how to market to that audience because you've never had to bother trying.
This is really
So
this is making me incredibly angry. And thank you for putting this out so clearly, because this is really something that I think people can take home with and understand that white folks if they fail or if the book doesn't sell, is the book's fault, and they get okay, you can write another book. But black folks, they have maybe one, and if it fails, it's the author is not talented enough or doesn't connect to
Well,
readers.
it's not just the author, it's also that demographic doesn't read. Like I said,
Hmm.
the lie that publishing tells itself and everybody else is, oh, we follow the market. Well, now, because people, care, and because people who care have resources, studies are being done. And for years running now, the highest reading demographic in America has been Black women and girls.
Hmm.
So, if publishing was actually following the market like they claim they are, the stuff that they put out would look very, very different. But they're not following the market. They're following what they want to be the market, what they've essentially been trained to cater to.
I am putting two names here into the local chat. Toshi Onyebuchi, I hope I pronounced this correctly, who was kicking this thing off, and then you jumped on this, and you guys kicked this off and brought some transparency into it. And you also mentioned A.K. Jemison, who was very successful, but it's quite
Yes.
shocking that she still, even after demonstrated success, was still lowballed in this industry.
Yes.
Well, well, well. What can I say? I come from the music industry where such things never happen. Sorry, that was a joke. Um, now, uh, I probably ignored a whole bunch of questions. We gotta slowly wrap it, and then we'll have L until the bottom of the hour, and people can still ask questions. My final question is, what are you working on now? Anything exciting?
Yes.
Can you work? Wait a minute. Sorry. The question that I forget is it's related. Are you working on something? Is the pandemic paralyzing you creatively?
It isn't. And it's, well, for one, I am blessed enough to be able to work from home. And
Hmm.
for two, I grew up in a culture where survival mode is the norm. So this is very, very much different, but it's similar to how the joke was made, by a lot of Black comedians um, during the 2000s. There was a recession, and Black folks was like, "What recession?" Like we didn't feel it because you laugh to not so that you don't cry, but
Yep.
it's kind of the
Yep.
same issue where it's like this is just more of the nonsense that's always been going on. It's just now that social media is a thing that exists, we all experience it at once, and it seems to be never ending. Well, things haven't gotten worse. We're just more aware. So it hasn't really impacted me. It did in 2020 because 2020 was just a lot. Um,
Yeah, and some of their stuff was also delayed, right? I mean, you're publishing.
well,
You had something
yeah.
ready to go, and then they said no, we can't put it out because you can't do any book tours and stuff like that.
Well,
And you're
that wasn't the only thing, but like 2020 was just a lot. Like I'm just like it was a lot for a lot of people, but I'm just gonna say as somebody who was part of the Black community during all that nonsense that was happening, there were days where if it wasn't so much, it would have been business as usual. Because again, unfortunately, you kind of train yourself to power through because you're told you don't have any other choice, right? Um, but it just got to be a lot. It was all the things at once, and the reasons people were or weren't doing things was based on a lot of negative feels and very familiar stunts that have been played across since this country has been a thing. So it was just really frustrating to watch it happen in real time.
mm,
Um, so it was just a lot. So there was a time for I don't think I wrote anything from February until I want to say July, August of last year.
Mm.
Like I would just every few months email my editors and be like, couldn't do it. See you again in 3 months. We'll talk about it. And they were just like, yep. um, but I, little bit by little bit, got it done. So as a result, I still managed to write 2 books last year. They're supposed
That
to be
is
done sooner, but I still managed to do it, and a few comics.
that is pretty good.
Um,
That's pretty good. We have people on here, Al, they go like, I mean, oh, it took me actually Will Wiles, who's an amazing author, and he was somewhat self-deprecating. He said, I only wrote 3 books in my lifetime. I feel like I'm paraphrasing. He didn't say I feel like a loser, but he felt bad about that. He wrote 3 absolutely amazing books. So El,
well, the
you have
thing
a
is
pretty good
that
output.
most people don't get to the end of the first book.
Hmm.
More people start books than finish them. So if you ever get to the end, even if you never do anything with it, you're like in the
Yeah.
in the 10th percentile. You're up there.
Yep.
You're yeah.
Totally.
So
You should totally open champagne when you finish it, no matter if it's published or whatever happens with it.
yeah,
Absolutely.
and little bit by little bit, there were some days where there would be weeks where I couldn't write more than a sentence or so a day. But, after a week, you've got a paragraph. After a month, you've got a page, and you start building on that. And then next month it's 2 pages, and the next month it's 4 pages, and then the next month it's 10. So, after a couple of years of only being able to do it for 10 minutes in the morning, you got a book. So
Hmm.
all books, whether they're done quickly or whether they're done slowly, are all done at the same pace, which is one word at a time.
There,
Um,
that is fantastic advice. And now I have a million more questions, but I'm going to wrap it and then we have you till the
cool.
bottom because then I'll ask you my favorite question, Black Panther, the movie, good or bad? Because we asked that last time we had a panel of African authors on. We talked about African futurism. It was super fascinating. Wole Talabi was leading the panel and to me it really blowing my mind with this whole discussion about Afrofuturism versus African futurism. But I'll wrap the mainstream, and then we'll have El for another 10 minutes to address these questions. So thank you so much, El. Thank you so much, team. Thank you so much, audience. Before we go, can the camera uh, pull back a little bit and show us this magnificent Wonderland location that Ruby built? There is a mirror next to us on the stage that is mirroring things, and there's a little Alice in there in the mirror. Uh, we are a visual medium, so I do want to spend 2 minutes on folks looking at this, and people on the YouTubes want to see this. There's a big potion bottle somewhere. That's a nod, of course, to Maddie in the book. Maddie is a poet and is running the bar at the Looking Glass in Elle's book. She's making potions all the time. There are floating bubbles around. They can explode and they can wet you on the spot. There are also bubbles in the glow area of Wonderland in Elle's book. There is glowing grass from the glow area that surrounds the portal. There are, of course, mushrooms everywhere. There are, of course, weird grass that is glowing. And we saw the nightmares earlier, these terrible nightmares. They're all weirdly gelatinous black things. Um, Jessica in the local chat says she drank some of the potions. I guess you're still alive, so that's good. And yeah, that's the flora and fauna, the flora, only the flora of Wonderland. And this location will persist. You can visit it. You can click on the books on the table. You will be thrown to Elle's website. You can find out more information about her. Again, big thanks. Now, my last question always to everybody that you can answer on the book trailer on my YouTube channel. What are you reading right now? Please put that on there. Elle, if you wanna let us know, tell us. And Shyla, put the link to the book trailer in the local chat. Head on over there, folks, and put that. That's where I collect everything what people say here, and then I'll put it in a neat little document. But what are you reading right now, Elle?
Well, right now I am sort of rereading, I guess, Shattered Midnight by Danielle Clayton.
Mhm.
It is the second in the Mirror novel series. It's written by four different authors, four women of color, of which I am one. The first one came out last year called Broken Wish. Danielle's is the second. It comes out this October. It's called Shattered Midnight. And this series starts in 1800s Germany and ends in America in the early 2000s. And it follows a family, and it's the tale of the magic mirror, this artifact that attaches itself to this family in the 1800s, and the magic and the curse follows them through to the 2000s, and each book deals with a new generation dealing with it. So you got the 1800s Germany, then the 1920s New Orleans, and then the 60s in San Francisco, and then the last book takes place in the early 2000s. So it's a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun working with these women, and I'm really excited for everybody to get the second book.
Damn, if there's Germany in there, I have to buy it too. Now, let's run through the credits. The Second Life Book Club is every Wednesday, 12 o'clock Pacific time. The email is slbookclub@draxtor.com. As a matter of fact, next Wednesday, we do not have a show, but we have two shows the week after that. Just go to the calendar um, or email if you have any questions to slbookclub@draxtor.com. The website is draxtor.com/slbookclub, or you go to second.life/book club. The show is produced by Isabel Sharen, Shyla, the Super Gecko, and myself. Location manager, master builder, Ruby Geek. Really amazing. This is the best world that you ever built, Ruby, and you built a bunch of them. We're going to get our third island pretty soon. Special thanks, Marianne McCann, Arden Schwartzman, Theanine, AJ McDowell, Brett and Patch from Linden Lab, and all the moles at Linden Lab. Oh, the avatars are made by Silas, Ruby, and Kralos. As of late, Ruby is double duty because she's also making all the avatars. A matter of fact, the lookalike of Alexandra Kollontai for Kristen Gotzi, who wrote a book called Why Women Have Better Sex Under Socialism. See, everybody woke up in the audience. I know it. That's coming next week. We have a whole bunch of sponsors. The sponsors are scattered around the island. There are panels, so click on them and find out who these sponsors are. If you like their stuff, pick up the stuff from the Second Life Marketplace. If you have any critique or ideas, slbookclubdraxter.com. And do not forget to tip our volunteer staff, please. Very, very important. Spread the word within the Second Life community or outside of it that we have this wonderful thingy called the book club. As I said, next Wednesday, no show, but then we have the next guest, uh, Gemma or GV Anderson, on September the 8th at 12 o'clock Second Lifetime. And the last thing I'm going to say, and then we're going to wrap it, is that we have a book discussion group finally starting Friday, September 3rd, about the three body problem, Sieging Liu's three body problem trilogy, which I'm obsessed with. I admit it. Some people find it a little bit misogynistic. I don't. If you like the series, but you find the depiction of women lacking, come to this discussion club. It's every Friday at 8 a.m. starting September 3rd. And if you're not interested in Sieging Liu's three body problem trilogy, come September 8th, 12 o'clock SLT, next show with GV Anderson. And I'll see you right there on the Second Life Book Club.